In today's video, we're going to cover how to answer behavioral interview questions in your interview with Wells Fargo. Behavioral interview questions are incredibly popular, but they're also really difficult to answer if you're not prepared to do so. In today's video, I'm going to give you some of the actual behavioral interview questions you'll be asked in your Wells Fargo interview, and I'm going to teach you how to answer them from a recruiter's perspective. Let's go. Now, the first thing we need to cover is what is a behavioral interview question. And it's any question that starts something like, give me an example of a time when, or tell me about a time when. It's essentially prefacing an interview question by requesting that you recall something in your past and walking them through how you handled it. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, and that's what behavioral interview questions try to get at. Now, I want to cover how you go about answering these from just a methodology perspective. Whenever you're asked a behavioral interview question, you want to use the STAR method to answer. That's situation, task, action, and result. It's essentially a framework on how you can walk them through your answer in a way that makes sense, delivers the points, and is timely. From a timing perspective, these questions on average should take you anywhere from about 45 seconds to 2 minutes to answer, depending on how long of an answer you need to give to satisfy the question. Now, with that covered, let's get into the actual questions. The first question that you will be asked in your Wells Fargo interview is, tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a coworker. Now, it's really important to cover a few things going through this interview question. First, it's really important that you don't come off as negative, right? It is possible to have a conflict without it being incredibly adversarial, right? It can be a minor disagreement on how to move forward strategically with a project. It could be just a different way of doing things. But it's really important that whatever example you give, you're keeping your cool during it, and you're coming off as someone who is level-headed and rational. A good example here is maybe a time that you had directives from a manager, and you and your colleague were supposed to work together, and you had a different opinion on how to proceed. It's really important that when you're talking them through this, not only do you use the STAR technique, situation, what was the situation you were in, what was the task you were both assigned to, what action did you take, and ultimately what was the result. It's really important that you talk to them. You listen to their perspective on it, their side of things, and then you persuade them ultimately to do your course of action because you think that's best and here's why, and then the outcome of you two working together and it being a collaborative effort. Ideally, you can give them some example like that, but it's really important that when you're doing this, you're taking time to listen to the other person, hear their perspective, give valid points in a calm way, and ultimately you reached resolution. Any example like this in which you follow those general guidelines is going to end well for you. The next question is, tell me about a time you failed at work and what did you learn from this experience? Now, this is one of the most classic behavioral interview questions you're going to get asked, so it is very common. And when you're asked a question like this to describe a time when you failed, I like using a rule called the first 50% rule. And the first 50% rule means you give them example from the first 50% of your career. Why do I advise doing this? Because then you can give them an example of a time when you made a mistake, but you've already put some distance between yourself and now. So if they said, Ben, give me an example of a time you failed at work, and I go, oh, well, last week I made a huge accounting error that cost my company $1 million. They're going to be like, whoa, that just happened. That makes me nervous. But if I said something along the lines of, I've had my 12-year career, in year 5, I made a mistake and blah, blah, blah. Now, I wouldn't say the numbers like that, right? But you would give them an example of a time in which, this was a while back. So you've put some distance from yourself and that mistake. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to make this authentic. It can't be something where, what's my greatest weakness? I try too hard, right? That comes off as inauthentic, and you never want to do that in an interview. And this here, you also don't want to do that. So give a legitimate mistake. It can't be something too dire, right? You didn't burn the building down. Make it something authentic. Make it something in the first half of your career, and then talk about what you learned here. It's really important that you talk about, the feedback loop. You made a mistake. You learned something, and moving forward, you made sure that you didn't make that mistake because of A, B, and C. If you can do those things, you'll do great. The next question is another classic, and it's a great one. Tell me about a time you took initiative at work. This is really good because most companies want someone who's willing to take initiative, and it shows that you're someone who isn't just going to follow their day-to-day tasks, but rather is going to do their job, but when they notice there's an opportunity to do something better, go above and beyond, fix something, it shows that you're willing to do that, and that's really positive. A few things here. One, You want this to be authentic. Don't make something up, right? Because they might probe, they might ask secondary, third, fourth questions. And if they keep asking and this is something you made up, it's going to be really hard for you to maintain that. So make it something you really did. Number two, it needs to be something that's above and beyond your job, right? If my job as a recruiter, I can't just say I filled a role. That is my job. This should be something above and beyond that. It took initiative to do this. So it should be something outside of the typical scope of your job, and the accomplishment should also be commensurate with that, right? This is above and beyond. So that's really important. Lastly, you're following that STAR framework: situation, task, action, result. Result is really important here. If you're going to be taking an initiative, doing something that wasn't asked of you, but instead something you saw and you decided to make a decision, you called an audible, the outcome is really important, because was it the right call? What was the impact? Was it the right decision? Like, these are very important. So make sure that it's authentic, above and beyond your role, follow the STAR technique, and put an emphasis on the result. The next one is, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult customer. What was the situation and how did you tackle it? So this is really interesting because this is a very classic, common behavioral interview question. And there's a few things that are really important here. One, use the STAR technique. This is one of those things where you need to be telling the situation. Two, difficult customer, it's really important that the way you position this is that you didn't take it personally. They weren't upset with you, they were upset with the situation. And you, as someone who is customer facing, saw it as an opportunity to right a wrong, fix what was going wrong for them. That's really important. Then you need to show that you stayed cool, calm, and collected. You asked them questions, you found out what went wrong, you got their perspective, and then you went above and beyond to resolve their issue. So at the end of the day, instead of someone who was unhappy, a detractor, they became someone who was an advocate for the brand. You did such a good job remedying their situation, not taking it personal, acting calm, inquiring as to what happened and fixing it for them, that they became a strong brand advocate. That is a story you want to tell through answering this question. Do it with situation, task, action, result, make it authentic, and walk them through exactly what happened. But if you can tell a story that mirrors that type of timeline, you're going to absolutely crush this interview question. Now, these have all been really important interview questions, but maybe the most important interview question you'll ever get asked in an interview is, why do you want to work here? Which is why I made this video. This video here covers, why do you want to work at Wells Fargo? I give you 4 great examples. That way you can listen to all 4 and decide which one makes the most sense for you, and then you can use it to absolutely crush that interview question. So I'm done here, but I will see you over there.